Grab your seats. I learned something from my spiritual father, Dr. Jonathan, when we was in Malaysia. Those of us that were there, those times he was in excruciating pain, but he did not allow that to be an excuse to execute what God wanted him to do. And sometimes we have very many excuses in the house of God, and they're not really a good enough reason not to serve him the way that you should. Amen? Today we're going to talk about how to subdue the attacks of the enemy. Desi already stole my scripture, but anyway. I want us to understand that the devil has one primary assignment against all of us, and that is that he wants to kill you and completely destroy you. He wants to remove any mention of your name on the planet. He wants to ensure that you leave no legacy, and he wants to ensure that the only thing that is left after you is destruction, a mess, and a mockery of the kingdom of God. Anything that he does to distract you is purely to ensure that you do not be obedient to God. Children, can you be a little bit more quiet, please? He wants to disconnect you from the branch. He wants to remove you from your position of purpose. And he wants to ensure that you are not a success. And he will use everything within his means to destroy you, break you down, limit you, and bring you to a place where you think there is no point in serving this God. That means everything that you feel that opposes you serving God is from hell itself. Whether that's your own head, your own feelings, or what you think, if they oppose you serving God, being in his house, submitting to his word, walking after the mandate on your life, it is a demonic influence. Anything that hinders you from connecting with the God that you say you've given your life to has a demonic influence or root. Ephesians 6:11-18 says, "Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand." Do you know what a wile is? A trick, a strategy meant to fool you, to trap you, to entice you. It's a device. It's something that he has artfully created to beguile your behavior. It is deceitful, it is cunning, it is trickery to make you spend or pass away your time, especially in a leisurely or pleasurable fashion. In other words, the way that the devil looks to destroy you is not always in a head-on attack. Sometimes he does it while he's massaging your back, rubbing your toes, and feeding you chocolate. It feels very nice. Why stop if it feels nice? That's why the scripture says that we are not wrestling on the fleshly plane. There is an instruction in that scripture that will help us to be able to stop and block the wiles of the enemy. It says, put on your whole armor. That means being partially prepared or fitted or in uniform is not going to be enough to withstand the wiles of the enemy. We haven't even talked about the head-on brutal attacks. I'm just talking about how he wants to caress your flesh. This is one of the main reasons you must allow your flesh to die, because your flesh has been tainted from the moment that Adam and Eve took of the fruit to be yielded to sin. Your flesh has within it the ability to yield and host sin. Your flesh, from the moment we came from our fallen state, now has a yieldedness to want to go after sin. So the enemy can destroy you through the pleasures of life. This is why we say yield yourself, so that everything you desire, every appetite that you have comes from the right root. Because if you're not a yielded vessel, if you're not a yielded heart, if you're not a yielded mind, if you're not giving yourself to God daily, you do not know for a fact where some of your dreams, appetites and desires are rooted. Because if the enemy is using wiles to deceive you and to trick you into wasting your time, if your flesh is not dealt with, imagine how much of your time you spend being led by the devil and his trickery and his artful plans and beguiling that he set up to pull you away from the presence of God in an enjoyable fashion. I know the devil is a defeated foe, and I know that he is limited, and I know that he is somebody who is degenerating because he's separated from his original source. But he's not as stupid as you think. He has watched man for thousands of years, and he knows what we like. So when you look at the media, for example, you can see the blueprint of the enemy all over the media. It pulls your eyes, it pulls your ears, it pulls your appetite, it conforms and controls what you wear. It even controls the kind of language and slang that you speak. And it all feels nice because you're repping any. It's a deceitful trick. It's a pleasurable fashion. It's a trend. It's the way we are. It's the way we do things. This is how we are. And it's nothing to do with God. Something happened in the house last night when I was preparing. I wrote out all of my notes. And I opened my mouth and I said, my notes are done now. I just need to type them. And the minute I said that, it was like the enemy decided to do everything to distract me through the children. And through the monitor, you heard them begin to wail out, screaming. I don't mean crying. I mean like they were in distress. And for an hour, we were up and down the stairs praying and watching the kids. And as I went up the stairs, I heard, it's a distraction. So after a while, I sat back and let my sister go, because it was a distraction. There was nothing wrong. I wasn't a bad mom. I just wasn't allowing the enemy to pull on my emotions to distract me from my assignment. You with me? Came back down. We just finished, there was a program on grand designs. I think because I'm a builder by my spiritual nature, I like watching programs about building things. And as it finished, they said there was a film coming on afterwards called Insidious. I've never seen it. But what I saw of the trailer was enough to let me know it's not the kind of thing a believer should watch. It was a horror movie. And out of my mouth I said, I don't even want that to come through the TV because of the spirits attached to it, looking for access into people's lives. And then I realized the Lord was speaking to me about something. There are so many doors that we have that we allow the enemy access into, that we are oblivious that while he's massaging us, there's someone creeping up behind you with a knife to slit your throat. The enemy is not your friend. He doesn't like you. Even if he gives you the nice house, the nice clothes, the good-looking husband, the good-looking wife, the amounts of money that you want, a successful career, he doesn't like you. You can't play his game and play him. You either have to be with God to overcome him, but if you step into his domain, you're in his territory now. He's a legalist, which means he sticks to the letter of the law. So if you open the door, he's going to walk in. If you don't pray, he's going to run roughshod all over your head. If you don't read the word, he will ensure that you cannot hear God. He will take dirt and he will fill your wells so that when you look for God where you used to be able to find him, all you find is the stench of the dirt of your flesh. It is the everyday practicing of the presence of God that keeps you strong. It is not Sunday. It's not even coming to Bible study or coming out on a Tuesday. It's what you and him do behind closed doors that will ensure you are able to stand against the wiles of the enemy. Because it's hard to turn something down that you like. And it's harder to turn something down that you find satisfying. And if that pleasure and that satisfaction is connected to your flesh, the only choice you have if you're going to serve God is to kill your flesh. And if you're one of these people who every time you sit in the dentist seat, I'm giving an analogy, and they say, okay, I'm going to give you the injection now, and you keep going, oh, okay. And you have to say, you're going to have to hold me down because I won't sit here and let you. Even though I know I've come, I've paid the money to have this filling, when it comes down to that needle approaching my mouth, I'm not going to keep still. So doctor, I suggest you go and get a nurse and another assistant to hold me down. If I kick you, I'm sorry. I don't mean to. It's an instinct in me because I know you're going to hurt me. And if you're like that, that's why God has given you pastors. Amen. Because I'll kick you back. You know, lifeguards say that sometimes it's easier to help somebody who is unconscious than someone who's alive. So I'm just telling you. You still with me? You sure? The enemy wants to distract us. He is interested in making sure that we come to a place in our lives when we're no longer able to connect with God. He wants your mind. He wants your creativity. He wants your emotions. He wants your thoughts. He wants everything about you to ensure that you have no way to connect with heaven. You still with me? Sorry, I'm thinking about time, so I'm snipping. We were listening to a DVD, I think it was last year, about how the world operates spiritually. The different systems and ranks of operation in the demonic realm. How there will be a kingpin, for example, who's in charge of certain other spirits and natures and mindsets. And he has his people that go out and infiltrate until it comes down to just a natural opinion on earth. For example, it's okay for two men to marry, isn't it? After all, they're committed. More committed than some couples, and they're in love. So a natural belief system has come from a demonic source. So there's a demonic stronghold holding that thought pattern on the planet. There are demonic principalities forming the opinions of nations, forming the opinions of cities, areas within those cities, streets within those cities, families within those cities, persons within those cities. So you hear people say things like, this is how the Millers are. I'm serving God, but this is how I am. Because there is something connected to your speech wanting to justify the fact that your nature is not like God. When I hear people say, this is how I am, what I'm actually hearing you say by the Spirit is, I refuse to change. I have every reason to justify my nature, my behavior, and my attitude. And if God don't like it, he should know this is how I am. That is what it smells like to me when you speak. When we speak like that, it is the sound of pride. And pride comes before a fall. These spirits want to change your atmosphere in your life. Mood swings, emotional states. You know what the Lord said to me this weekend? I watched something with my sister. She showed us a brief clip. I can't remember what the sitcom's called. And this young lady was in her cycle. And at first it was really funny. Then afterwards the Lord said, you know, there's a spirit behind that, don't you? I was thinking, no, there's not. I know what I feel. He said exactly. That there is a spirit behind it to justify us for a few days a month to behave as if we have no boundaries, no control, no limitations. You know I'm not that bad. But you feel it coming on. You know when you talk, you say, you're not going to feel my period coming, you know. I feel so... All of a sudden you feel this sense of a lack of control, and things that you can cope with on any other days of the month, all of a sudden the ability to harness yourself and subdue your flesh is gone. Can I suggest to you that there is a spiritual stronghold operating to justify patterns of behavior? How is it that there are certain parts of Birmingham you can go into and they have a certain reputation? That you can walk around that area and everybody kind of is the same, or have the same nature, or the same way, or people of a certain belief system all flock to the same area. And when they all flock together, all of a sudden they begin to spread out and begin to take over areas, streets, businesses. You think that's natural? He uses wiles to take you off track. And he can come to you and work out what's your thing. What's your niche? What's the thing that's going to get this one? And if he has to study you for 5 years, he'll do it. He'll pretend to fight with you. I'll pretend to fight. Make her think that she's won and she's strong and she's powerful and she's walking with God, and I'll sit back and I'll wait for her. Because I've seen what the issue is. And she's so busy not doing the everyday thing that she doesn't realize that she needs to yield in this area. And then I'm going to come and get her in about 2 years' time, when she's completely oblivious because she thinks she's overcome. Because she's dropped the level of prayer, she's dropped the level of fasting, she's dropped the level of speaking in tongues, she's dropped her level of commitment to the house of God. And I will wait, because I'm a strategist. And I would rather wait 5 years and completely destroy someone than keep going in a tug of war with this person. Because I have a limited strength and a limited ability. And I'm not what I used to be. So I can't waste as much time as I used to, because my days are short. So when I hit you, I have to make sure that I hit you good and proper. And based on how you've behaved over the years, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get you. So he waits for you to give him a window of opportunity so that he can take you out based on the things that you like. You know, you can get so deep into something that it feels as though the only way is to go with it. Because your flesh now is so drawn by this thing. When the Bible says every man is drawn away by the lust of his own heart, that means the things in your heart that are not dealt with by the Spirit of God, those things that you leave because you think somehow you have the ability to override something you struggled with for the whole of your life, all of a sudden, even though you don't fast about it, pray about it, lay on the altar before God about it, somehow you think you have the power within you to play with it when you want to and put it down when you want to. Dogs don't operate like that. Have you ever seen somebody with a Rottweiler as a puppy compared to somebody who has a poodle as a puppy? Have you seen how they treat the dogs? The one with the poodles, and one with the Rottweiler will give them something in the mouth like a rag, because they want to draw a certain nature out. They want to magnify and increase a certain nature that they know is in that breed. I want to train this dog from the beginning to operate according to the nature within them. And the devil wants to train you according to the nature of sin in your flesh. So you can't play with that Rottweiler forever, because one day it's big enough to turn around and bite your hand off. That's sin. Still with me? You sure? You know, verse 13 of that same scripture says this: therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. And this is what I heard. The enemy wants to have a day like God. He wants there to be a season, a time, a day when man gives open worship to him. He wants the whole earth to join in a spirit of yielding to him so that he can operate freely. This will be the open manifestation of the Antichrist. Believers and sons across the nations of the earth must stand on the front lines of the battlefield and hold the line. Hold the territories for Christ as the heavenly hosts stand with us. This is a multi attack, not just personal, but this is a prophetic attack. In other words, the enemy is launching an attack on more than one level. What I just read there is not just about one moment. Whether he does it individually, whether he does it to a group of people, whether he does it to a nation, he's looking to have his evil day in our lives, in individuals' lives, in the nation's lives, in a country's life. He's looking to set up an arena, a setting to usher in this nature of the Antichrist. And the only ones on the earth who can limit him and reduce him and push him back is us. But if we don't even know how to take up our rightful place on the front lines of the battlefield to withstand him in just our everyday living, there are nations that are going to fall away. There are cities that will fall away. There are nations and towns and families and streets that will fall away as a consequence of our lack of yieldedness while there was day. So I'm going to finish with these three things, and we'll go into it in more depth next week. There are certain areas that you must begin to recognize are a part of your weapons of warfare. The first one is your mouth. Some of us are so slack with our mouths. Have you ever heard of this term, verbal diarrhea? You say what you feel when you feel it, what you think, what you think, what you feel of what you think, and what you think of what you heard, and what you heard, and your opinion, and what you've been through, and how I feel, and what I think, and what I saw on TV, what I read in a magazine, what my friend said, what that friend said, what my mom said, what my cousin said, what I read in a magazine, what I read on Facebook, what I got text, what I saw on the newspaper. You just say whatever comes into your head. We repeat what the enemy wants us to repeat. and forget that he's a legalist. And you open your mouth and you say things and wonder why now I feel as though I've lost strength when I praise, because you opened your mouth. You said something that he planted via a familiar spirit through one of the world doctrines or opinions that he's established on the earth. You open your mouth and you yield to that thing in agreement, and you wonder why you've lost strength. He's a legalist. You ever watch The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe? When the witch is brazen and walks to the lion and says, you know what the scrolls say, you know what is in, don't tell me what it says. But she walked in there brazen because she was using the word. She was a legalist. What are you going to say now? You know what he's done, and I know what your word says, and I know what the consequences of his behavior is. Even though the enemy knows that the blood of Christ is available, even though he knows that Jesus did a finished work on the cross, he knows that some of us don't know what that means. We haven't taken any time to read about what Christ has done. We haven't taken any real time to ask the Holy Spirit, what does the blood of Jesus mean for me? And so when the enemy presents himself to you, you don't really know what to do because you don't know what your rights are. Because every day you don't do what you're supposed to do. And you say whatever you want. If you knew how powerful your mouth was, the Bible says that life and death comes out of the power of your tongue. Sometimes we are digging our own grave with the things that we say, just because it comes into our heads. It's not everything that comes into your head you must speak. You have to begin to search out scriptures concerning certain attacks that you experience. Don't just sit there and complain. People keep saying salvation is free. No, it's not. It costs Jesus something, and you have to pay for it with the rest of your life. So if you think you can serve him and still do what you want, you cannot. Because either you serve him full stop, or you reject him and you walk away. And be warned, if you walk away and reject him, the devil that you once was able to defeat in certain areas has built back his strength, and he will bring back 7 more now and say, yeah, I remember how you thought you was bad in this area. Let's see how bad you are now. You're not praying, you're not reading your word, you're not fasting, you don't go to church, you don't do nothing. All of the vows you made to God in worship when your heart was yielded and open and you allowed your true nature to be made manifest to God. You've subdued all of that now with sin, and you've pushed it all down, and you don't speak to God, and you get frustrated now when you come to a new obstacle and challenge in your life, and you allow yourself to get to a place where your mouth has become his weapon instead of your weapon. Your words operate as a prophetic marker in the spirit. Do you know what that means? When they did a biopsy on me, they said that there'll come a point when, if I go ahead with this treatment, they will put markers in there, so that even if the tumor reduces, the markers will be the place where they still focus certain treatments on. So even if it looks like it's gone, they will use the markers to still hit that point. Some of us, we open our mouths and we speak all manner of slackness and stupidity, and it becomes a marker in the spirit concerning that area. And when the enemy can't find any other way to get in, he sees the markers. Because you can legalize things with the words of your mouth. Life and death is in the power of your tongue. That means you can speak life for yourself, or you can speak death for yourself, for a situation, for a people, for your enemy, for your welfare, for your health, for your finances, for your relationships. So when you say stupid things like, this is the way all my relationships have been, I'm always struggling with money. Children, too loud. I'm always struggling with money. I don't know how to pray. I can't pray. It's too hard. I'm too tired. You legalize things in the atmosphere for familiar spirits to hold on to those things and put pressure on you in those areas that you spoke about. You've got to use the strength of your conviction concerning the word to speak. So you have to say, I am victorious. I am successful. The word says that anything God made, he did it well. I don't care how much you feel like you're not. I don't care how much you feel like you have not arrived. I don't care how big this thing gets inside my body. I know for a fact, within my knowing, that there is nothing more powerful than his word. And if he said it, if he's taken time to put it in a book called the Bible, there is no other authority that can override it. Sometimes you have to look at yourself and say, I will be all that I already am. Your mouth can either be your greatest weapon or your greatest destruction. Your thought life. Some of us, we think too much rubbish. We do not have any restraints on our minds. Whatever thought floats in, we play with it for a while, we think about it, and then we think about whether or not we want to think about that thing anymore. And if I keep thinking about it, what else could I think about concerning that thing? And you don't stop to think about the root or the source of where that thought came from. You don't stop to think about whether or not that thought is going to do any good. You don't stop to think about whether or not that thought is for any purpose. And you don't realize that the enemy can build strongholds within you because you do not challenge the thoughts in your own mind. And then you try to lift your hands and pray, and you feel like chains have been put around you. That's called a stronghold. Something is holding on to you and making you stay in a situation, a circumstance, a feeling, a mood, a thought pattern that all of a sudden now you don't have the ability to release yourself from. But it didn't start that way. Strongholds build, they take up momentum, they draw your energy, they draw your strength, they draw on your authority, because the more you allow that thought to stay in your mind, it's the more you're giving it energy to reside. You know, in the natural they say possession is how many tenths of the law? The devil is a legalist. So he thinks, if you're letting me stay in here, it's because you want me here. And if you don't want me here, I've grown strong enough now that I'm staying here. It's called a squatter. Even squatters have rights, you know. Squatters, once they get in and have been in a property for long enough, can apply for gas and electric in your house. Can you imagine how much of your energy that the enemy is drawing from you because you've let him? Short-circuiting you all the time. So you pray and it gets short-circuited. You try to worship and it's short-circuited. Your finances get short-circuited. You try to override certain things from your past and it comes back. Everything keeps short-circuited because there are things that you've allowed to remain in your system that you will not deal with. Or when you had the strength to, you left it alone because at the time you were stronger than it, so you thought it didn't matter. How you think is who you are. The Bible says, as a man thinks, so is he. How you think is a picture of who you are. It's not what you say, it's not what you wear, it's not the big talk, it's not what you drive, it's not where you live, it's not who you're married to, it's not your associations, it's not your wage packet, it's not your career, it's not your job, it's what you think on the inside is who you really are, because those are the things you allow to remain in your head. Warfare in the spirit is less to do with your jumping and shouting and singing songs and more to do with your mouth and how you think about the word of God. Because if every time you hear the word of God, you reject it in your head, there is a stronghold in operation blocking you from accepting that truth. And that is a weapon of warfare that the enemy has strategically planted to hold you. That you let him plant. He sends out feelers and sees what you respond to. And based on what you respond to is where he starts to build. How you react to certain situations and pleasures and fashions are where he will look to build a fortress and lock you in it. In here. So you can hype the hype and talk the talk, but the evidence of your lifestyle speaks greater than what you say. And from how you behave, I know what you think. God knows what you think from how you behave. Concerning healing, do you know what I think? Do you know what I think? Without me ever saying a word, do you know what I think? My actions, the choices that I've made from December the 11th until now speak of what I think and what I believe. Come on. What's going on in your head is what makes you act the way you act. The things that you don't deal with in your head are what making you act the way you act. The fact that I've been saved for 10 years and up to yesterday I was challenged to think, are you telling me that when I feel my emotions and all these things happening at that time of the month, there's a spirit behind this thing? Just because I never thought about that area because I thought that's what happens to women. For every concept that you receive from the world that you do not challenge, there is a consequence. For every strong concept and thought pattern that you can see operating in the city that you live in that you do not challenge and ask God, is this anything to do with you? There is a consequence. If nobody challenges these things, this is one of the things we heard in Manchester, there must be the voice of the kingdom. And the voice of the kingdom isn't one that attacks. The voice of the kingdom is one that speaks the truth. If nobody speaks the truth into the atmosphere, into institutes, into governments, there is nobody contending and allowing the Spirit of God to have residence on the earth through the words that we speak. And I'll touch this last one finally, and then we'll go into more detail next week. Prayer. There's no point in praying if you don't even know what it is, you don't really believe in it, and you do it because you think we've told you should do it, or that's what Christians do. It is better that you spend a week, a month, studying what prayer is according to the word, and then stand up and open your mouth, than waste your time in vain repetition, drawing more demons. Have you ever seen a scene in a movie, forgive me, a movie doesn't come to mind, where there's someone standing there saying, yeah, I can beat you. And the other person, you can beat me. Yeah. And everything about the person's demeanor says, no, you can't. You don't believe it, and you know you can't. And in your head, I've already beaten you because you look terrified of me, and you want to fight me. Some of our prayers look like that before the enemy, because you haven't taken time to find out who you are in him and what prayer is and the impact that it will have on your life. You know that prayer in its rawest definition means to communicate with God. So you say you're in a relationship with him, but you don't talk to him. What happens in relationships when you don't communicate? Newsflash, you are not in a relationship, an active relationship with God, if you do not speak to him daily. and more than once a day. I couldn't wake up in the morning and say, hello, and that's it for the day. The whole day passes, all manner of things happen in the day, and then I don't say anything else to God. And I'm fooling myself into thinking I'm in a relationship with him. No, you're not. Prayer in its rawest form is communication, speaking to God and listening. So it's not all of the, Lord, I just believe, and Lord, Sometimes it's when you're walking on the way to work, you say, God, I just can't stand that person. You've got to help me today, God. I know your word says, God. For a long time I was taught that when you pray before God, you must keep your emotions out. And then I read about Hezekiah. And the prophet came to him in his place and said, God said you're dead. You best just fix up your affairs, sort out your stuff. There are certain things that he did that cause a consequence later on. So newsflash, there are consequences to everything we do that we don't deal with properly. He didn't sort out certain things. He wasn't very well. The prophet came and said, I've sought the Lord, and the Lord said, you're going to die. And left him. And Hezekiah, the Bible says, turned his face and wept bitterly and said, God, please. That speaks of relationship. Sometimes it's not just the scriptures that you know. It's the sincerity of your heart before this God that we say that we serve, that we believe that God, if I ask you, please God, I know you can. But you don't plead with someone you've got no relationship with. The only other time you may plead is if it's with a police officer and you don't want another ticket, you don't want no more points. To enforce God's word in prayer, we must have inner strength. This is formed in our lives on an everyday basis. That means we pray whether it feels good or not, because your feelings have nothing to do with it. Therefore, you must have a yielded life, a life of obedience, and a clean life. These combine to create a spiritual energy to push against the enemy and force the words that we speak to become anchors. A yielded life, a obedient life, and a clean life combine to create a spiritual energy to push against the enemy and force the words that we speak to become an anchor. That means you've got to speak from a position of knowing who you are. You've got to speak from a place of knowing that you're committed to God, that you're yielded to Him, that you're walking in the fullness of the obedience according to your understanding at this point in your walk with Him, and that you're doing your utmost to be holy and righteous before Him. If you're not doing that, you've got no power. You may be able to access His mercy, but you don't operate in His power. Please hear me. The enemy is looking to kill you, annihilate you, remove you, destroy you, reduce you. And he wants to bring you to a place ultimately where you no longer believe in God, trust God, hope in God, or rely on God. And the minute he has that nature formed in you, he is beginning to bring you to a pathway of destruction. So I would urge you, if any of these sensations are arising in your flesh, in your thought patterns, shut them down with all intensity and fervency. Because otherwise there will come a day when you have no footing. Do you hear?